This is the Bering Strait. Apart from Sarah Palin using it to see Russia from her house, the Bering Strait seems unremarkable on the surface. That is, until one realizes that this strait was the closest point linking the old world of Afro-Eurasia to the new world of the Americas. According to the out of Africa theory, once our ancestors migrated out of our African homeland and dispersed, some of us made it to the Americas. We had believed this as occurring perhaps 10 to 15,000 years ago, but new discoveries extend this timeline to at least 25 to 30,000 years ago. That said, the Americas were the last continent to remain uninhabited, with humans emerging onto the American continents well after they had been in other areas. This didn't stop them from producing two of the main 6 cradles of civilization, areas where advanced sedentary cultures independently formed. To get on the continent, scientists and historians believe humans used the Bering Strait, which was once a land bridge that has since disappeared as the sea level rose. It could also simply have been an ice bridge. Moving south, towards a warmer climate, these first humans on the continent would keep expanding, a process of thousands of years, eventually reaching the tip of South America. Most societies in the Americas were hunter-gatherers, taking advantage of the wide variety of species in the differing climates. Some hunted in the forest, some in the plains. Others on the coast would fish. In warmer and wetter climates, in Mesoamerica, there is evidence of farming as far back as 5000 BCE. By 3000 BCE, cultures were cultivating maize, domesticating it to produce bigger crops. Further to the south, potatoes would be the main food produced. Some of these cultures would eventually become North America's first civilization. Though advanced Mesoamerican cultures existed since around 2500 BCE, by 1500 BCE, the Olmec emerged in this cradle of civilization. We've gone over the cradles in Mesopotamia, Egypt, the Indus Valley, and the Yellow River Valley in previous episodes. Situated here, on the eastern coast of Mexico, in what is now Veracruz, the land was filled with either tropical forests or swamps, making widespread farming more difficult than for the other cradles of civilization. Farming was only made possible because of the warm temperatures year-round and reliability of rainfall. This allowed their maize crops to be harvested twice per year instead of just annually, giving them surpluses. They continued their hunting and gathering as well, picking cacao and palm nuts and hunting wildlife from the shorelines. By around 1200 BCE, there were at least 3 prominent cities that had emerged. San Lorenzo, the most significant early on, La Venta, and Tres Zapotec. The architecture in these cities was intricate and grand. And it had to be, since these were ceremonial centers. The Olmecs themselves mostly lived in villages outside of the cities. Earth pyramids were built inside, along with sunken plazas, where we believe they would play ceremonial Mesoamerican ball games. When most people think of the Olmecs though, they envision these. These colossal stone heads could be up to 3.4 meters, or 11 feet in height. They could also weigh up to 8 tons. Their faces were fleshy-cheeked, with a flat nose. Their appearance has sparked a lot of alternative origin theories. Sculpted from basalt boulders, brought from the mountains of Veracruz, the amount of intense labor involved in the transportation leads us to believe these figures were most likely portraits of Olmec rulers. They all wear protective helmets, perhaps used for war or religious affairs. Outside the city centers, villagers lived in modest dwellings, often with storage pits and gardens to pick herbs. The Olmec, as with most civilizations, traded with nearby cultures as well. We find their influence had spread throughout Mesoamerica, but they also utilized materials from other Mesoamerican cultures in their art. San Lorenzo was their largest and most important city for hundreds of years. Around 900 BCE though, Levanta became more important, and just 100 years later, San Lorenzo would be abandoned, possibly due to changes in the climate, or rivers changing course. Levanta became the successor to the Olmec civilization, with their Great Pyramid. It stands 34 meters tall, or 110 feet, and is regarded as one of the earliest pyramids built in Mesoamerica. It still stands today, withstanding thousands of years of erosion. By around 400 BCE, the Olmec civilization disappeared, or became unrecognizable. We still don't know what caused this decline. Perhaps the abandonment of San Lorenzo was destined for the other major cities. Though the Olmec could have simply vanished into the ether, it's just as possible that they lived on, in various other cultures. Their pyramid architecture has been seen in other Mesoamerican civilizations who followed them, along with the bloodletting rituals, and perhaps human sacrifice. The famous Mesoamerican ballgames were also passed down. Deities could have as well, and eventually ended up as Toltec or Aztec gods. We'll get to these societies in our next series on the Middle Ages, so be sure to subscribe. Just as the Olmec were the mothers of subsequent cultures in Mesoamerica, South America had its own early civilization, which also mysteriously disappeared. These were the Chavin. This complex culture began around 900 BCE, in the region around the Andes Mountains, in what is modern-day Peru. It isn't known what they called themselves, but the culture was named after the site of Chavin de Huántar, a religious and political center for the Chavin. Centered at the middle of Chavin influence on the coast, it would be the destination for pilgrimages for not only other Chavin, but others in the valley destined to visit the sacred temple. Once there, the religious ritual began. One would enter into the dark, maze-like temple, wandering through hallways and mysterious rooms. Sounds from trumpets would ring in the air, priests would appear and disappear once again, while the walls themselves bore no solace. Water channels left the continuous din of a roaring stream in the air, killing all moments of silence and sanity. On top of this, rituals involved ingesting a certain type of cactus containing mescaline. This provided the user with a sensory overload while within the temple, an experience like no other. We still aren't certain of the purpose of these rituals, as it appears the priests also ingested the cactus and created art while under the influence. The Chavin were thought to be South America's first true civilization. This turned out to be wrong. More recent excavations have uncovered an even older civilization in the Andean region. Not in the mountainous area, but in the region between the Andes and the coast. They were called the Norte Chico, or Caral. Outdating the Chavin, and even the Olmec, by almost 2,000 years, the Norte Chico comprised the sixth, and final, cradle of civilization to discuss. They developed around the same time as Old Kingdom Egypt. This area of modern-day Peru has often been overlooked, as it is extremely dry and arid, not suitable for any kind of ancient cities. Located between what we call rain shadows, mountains on one side, and the trade winds of the Pacific on the other, rain was a seldom occurrence, so the Norte Chico had to rely on extensive irrigation, and the main rivers of Fortaleza, Pativilca, and Supe, to provide melted mountain snow as their water supply. Scholars had been in debate over whether this was a true civilization, but the consensus is that they are the oldest civilization in all the Americas. Beginning as a maritime society, hunting fish and seafood, they truly flourished once adopting agriculture. Their population boomed, and they had one of the most densely populated regions of the world by the 2nd millennium BCE. Their main urban site was at Caral. Unfortunately, the Norte Chico was so ancient that there is no remaining art of these mysterious peoples. They were a pre-ceramic society, so no long-lasting pottery or visual art of any kind remains. All we have are their large mound structures or earthworks. Emerging around 3700 BCE, the Norte Chico would eventually decline by around 1800 BCE. It appears as if people dispersed in order to find more fertile lands, bringing their knowledge of irrigation with them. All of this, a full 1,000 years before the next great Andean civilization, the Chavin. The Norte Chico city of Caral seems to have influenced these successors, as well as more recent Andean civilizations. The quipu, used extensively by the Inca millennia later, was found as a device used at Caral. Its purpose back then is still up for debate. While these three civilizations stand out, the ancient Americas were still growing. When we next travel here, the successors of the Olmec in Mesoamerica and of the Caral in the Andean regions would have entered a classical period. As we welcome the Moche, Nazca, and the Mayans,